Summary of Out of This Furnace by Thomas Bell. A Slovak farmer from the Austro-Hungarian Empire named George Kracha boards a ship in Germany in 1881 to come to America. On the ship, he meets a beautiful woman named Zuzka Michula and spends his meager funds on an alcohol-filled birthday party for her. So, when Kracha gets to New York, he doesn't have enough money to buy a train ticket, so he walks to Pennsylvania. There, he meets up with his sister Franka and her husband Andre. Andre helps Kracha get a job with the trains. Joe Dubik, who is also from Slovakia, becomes friends with Kracha. Elena, Kracha's wife, moves to Whitehaven with him after a year. She is sick and sad, and she has a goiter in her neck that looks bad. Kracha doesn't like Elena because she is sick, so she treats her badly. She still has 3 children with him, named Mary, Alice, and Anna. Dorta and Dubik get married, and they move to Braddock, Pennsylvania, soon after. Dubik starts working in the blast furnaces there. When they get to Homestead, Pennsylvania, Andre gets a job in a steel mill, and the two of them move there too. Since Kracha's friends have left, he does the same and goes to Homestead. Andre gives his Irish boss $3 to get Kracha a job in the steel mill when the Krachas get to Homestead. Soon, he and Andre will go to Braddock to see Dubik and Dorta. They drink whiskey and talk about their jobs in the mills. It is dangerous, dirty, hard, backbreaking, and never-ending work. Until then, a smart and educated Slovak newcomer named Mike Dobrjčák moves to Braddock, lives with Dubik and Dorta, and works in the mill. People with skills go on strike in Homestead in 1892. The company, which is run by Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick, who hates unions, responds by breaking up the union. Kracha moves his family to the poor First Ward of Braddock and gets a job in the city's blast furnace. Not long after that, Dubik is killed by a blast in the furnace. Kracha leaves the steel mill and gets a butcher shop after Dubik dies. At first, things go well for him. On the advice of Joe Perawski, the owner of a bar and a real estate investor, he puts money into some land plots that might make money. Kracha only wants to make money. He doesn't want to vote or become part of American society. Zuzka goes into Kracha's shop one day. She moved to Braddock after her husband died. Right away, Kracha starts to want her again, and the two start having an affair. Franka and Dorta scold Kracha for cheating on his wife, while Elena gets worse. It gets out about the affair, which costs Kracha a few customers, and his land investment doesn't work out. Elena fails, and Mary gets a job with the rich Dexter family. Kracha gets married to Zuzka, but the funeral costs use up all of his savings, and he loses his butcher shop. He gets drunk and hits Zuzka, who then runs away from him. He finds out later that she has been taking his money. Kracha goes back to work in the steel mill because he is broke. It's 1900, and 25-year-old Mike Dobrjčák tries very hard to fit in with American society. He studies U.S. history and learns to speak and read English. He doesn't like that being a hunky keeps him from getting a better job. He falls in love with Mary Kracha right away, and the two of them start going out on dates. Mike wants to have a big house with lots of furniture like the Dexters and other Americans. Mary and Mike get married, and John Joseph is their first child. They get a bigger house, and Mary has a daughter named Pauline. Mike still doesn't like working at the mill for little pay, and Mary takes in boarders to help make ends meet. They are tired from the extra work, but the extra money helps them pay off their bills. Katie runs away with Anna while she starts working for the Dexters. Mary has their 3rd child, Mikey, the following year, and John starts school. Mike has to work the hard 24-hour shift at the mill. The event dulls his mind and body. In addition, Mary works long hours to feed the kids and guests and clean, wash, and sew. If she doesn't rest and give up the boards, Dr. Kralik tells her she could get sicker in the summer. As much as she doesn't want to, she has to let the boarders go. The family is struggling financially because of the lack of income, especially now that they have their 4th child, Agnes. Mike is still upset about how little he gets paid when the mill cuts his shift. He tells Mary that he is sad because he works so hard but never seems to get ahead. He thinks that he will always be a hunkie. As the midterm elections get closer, Mike wants to vote for Eugene Debs, the communist candidate. But his bosses tell him and the other steelworkers that if they don't vote Republican, they will lose their jobs. He still votes for Debs, and the company doesn't know about it. Steve Bodner and Mike get drunk at Joe Wold's bar after the election. They talk about how angry they are that there isn't a steelworker union, that the company is intimidating them, and that all their hard work isn't paying off. He is proud of the steel he makes, but he thinks that the people who run the steel business treat him like a machine that can be thrown away instead of a person with hopes and dreams. Kracha breaks his arm while loading scrap at the start of the new year. He goes to see Braddock when Anna's second child is christened. Mary makes John a cake for his 11th birthday and invites Kracha to stay the night. Mary and Mike talk about Alice's husband Frank Koval's injury in the mill and his plans to move the family to Michigan and buy a farm after the birthday party. Kracha says Mary looks better now that she doesn't have her guests. Kracha goes out to drink near the end of the night, while Mike works the night shift at the mill. Around midnight, Kracha goes back to Mary's house and hears a knock on the door. He answers it from the window on the second floor. Outside, a guy tells Kracha that Mike died from being burned at the steel mill. Kracha swears to God that he has to tell Mary the terrible news, so he goes into her bedroom and does it. Mike is dead. Mary gets $1,300 from the company for Mike's death, but she doesn't have time to cry. The housework has to be done right away, and the kids need to be ready for school the next morning. Mary moves to a 2-room apartment in a house full of boarders and kids because she can't stand being in the rooms where she and Mike lived. She quickly learns that in a town where many men die in the steel mill, people only feel sorry for women who have lost a husband. Mary works part-time at a dentist's office to sew, wash, and clean because she can't work full-time because of the kids. To make money for his family, John looks for coal, picks up scrap metal for pennies, and sells newspapers on the block. Mary is desperate to make ends meet, so she talks a grumpy and unwilling Kracha into moving in with her and paying for her board. John and Pauline start going to school in Munhall, and John gets a part-time job delivering wallpaper. When summer comes around, he gets a job in a glass plant to make some extra money. On Christmas Eve, Kracha is arrested for being drunk in public. Mary and John find him locked up and without any money. John wants to quit school in the spring to work full-time, but he is too young. His new ID is written by the school principal's office, but the date is changed to make him look 16 years old. The plan works, and John quickly gets a job at the North Braddock Steel Mill as an apprentice armature winder. Soon after New Year's, Mary gets sick and can't get out of bed for a long time. It sounds like Dr. Kralik and Pauline both have the Spanish flu, so she suggests that they go to a hospital. And gets Mary's $500 insurance policy, and Mary leaves Agnes her $750 policy in her will. Then she has a jeweler cut John's initials into her engagement ring, which she then gives to him before moving in with Pauline and Mikey. John moves in with Alice, and Kracha goes to live with Franca in Homestead. Soon, there will be a strike at the steel mill. John's uncle Frank tells him about unions. Because of the strike, John has to find work building things in Donora. Back in Braddock, workers on strike are fighting the company and the state cops, who work for the business. At Christmas, John goes to see his family. After giving each other gifts, John tells Mikey to start calling him Dobie, which is a name his friends at the electric shop have given him. Mary's state gets worse after being in the sanitarium for more than a year. She starts to dream about the life she should have, with her boys grown up and her girls pretty young women. She can't believe that when she wakes up one day, Mike will still be living and with her. She thinks how her life could have gone so badly. Her death will soon be peaceful in her sleep. Pauline passes away a year after her mother. After Mary's death, the sanitarium lets Agnes and Mikey go. The first one moves in with Anna, and the second one stays at Alice's house with Dobie. Every once in a while, Dobie hears what his general superintendent, Mr. Flack, is saying at the steel mill. Mikey, John's brother, is now working in the mill as a trainee mechanic with Chuck, his cousin. When Dobie's training is over, he chooses to move to Detroit. He works at both the Chrysler plant and a wheel shop there. Dobie moves back to Braddock and lives in Perofsky's hotel right as the Great Depression starts. He had lived in Detroit for 5 years. Wages and hours are going down at the steel company. Everyone is affected by the bad economy, except for the very wealthy. Dobie makes extra cash by connecting power lines that aren't supposed to be there so he can steal services from the utility companies. He meets and falls in love with Julie around this time. Julie is going to be Agnes' maid of honor at her wedding. Dobie starts dating Julie at the same time that his Aunt Anna tells him that the future elections will be terrible for the Republican Party. Kracha runs out of money in Homestead, and Franca tries to kill him faster by keeping him drunk. Her plan doesn't work out, and Kracha ends up moving in with Dobie. Julie and Dobie get engaged, and Kracha moves in with them so that they can get the money they need from his pension. The government takes over the relief tasks, and the steel mills are able to reopen, but not at full speed. The National Industrial Recovery Act gives workers the right to deal as a group through the reps they choose. However, the company gets around the law by setting up employee representation plans, ERP, which are like company unions but are run by steel bosses. Dobie and other workers are angry about the ERP, which makes the American Federation of Labor, AFL, send members to the steel towns to try to build real unions. Dobie gets involved in the Braddock Lodge, and soon the men choose him to be the union's secretary. He plans events and makes talks to get steelworkers to join the union. Julie likes his hard work and tells him he's the best person for the job. Soon, Dobie's bosses at the mill, Mr. Todd and Flack, find out about his work organizing and threaten to fire him. But Dobie doesn't stop working for the union, even going so far as to try to get around Walsh, the useless organizer from Pittsburgh. Dobie is shocked when his grandfather tells him at home that steelworkers in Braddock used to be part of a union. The ERP keeps getting in the way of legal organizing, and workers are getting more and more angry that their union isn't recognized. The union gets ready for a strike, but they call it off at the last minute because the AFL sets up a labor board instead. In the fall, Kracha has a stroke but lives. Dobie and Steve Gralji come up with a plan to take over the ERP from within because they want to bring the union back to life. Their job is to promote the union, and the plan works. When labor leader John Lewis sets up the Committee for Industrial Organization, CIO, to unite the steelworkers, it gives them a huge boost in their work. The CIO sends men to the mill towns to join together. Kracha has another stroke and dies at the same time that Julie gets pregnant. Dobie agrees to speak against the company's anti-worker actions in Washington, D.C., even though Todd threatened to fire him, because the CIO wants him to. On the other hand, Dobie thinks that the hearing should happen in a mill town and be supervised by a group of thousands of regular people who lost their lives working in the steel business. Flack tells Dobie that he is lying about the company when he gets back to Braddock, but Dobie stands up to him and learns that his job is safe. The steel company gives up early the next spring and signs a deal with the CIO. This ends a 50-year fight for the steel business and sets it free. After the union's victory, Dobie thinks about the next battle. Every person should have the freedom to live their life as they see fit, and their place of birth should define them but not bound them.
About the author. Adalbert Thomas Belichkak was Thomas Bell's real name when he was born in Braddock, Pennsylvania, in 1903. Bell began working in the steel mill when he was 15 years old. At first, he was a junior mechanic. During his teens, he also started writing, and by the time he was in his early 20s, he was writing for the Braddock News Herald. In 1922, Bell went to New York and kept working there. His first book, The Breed of Basil, came out in 1930. All Brides Are Beautiful, his second book, was released in 1936. It is a love story set in New York before World War II. The University of Pittsburgh Press reprinted Out of This Furnace in 1976, but it came out in 1941. It is his best-known work. Many of the characters in Bell's book were based on his family's life as Slovak immigrants who worked as steelworkers in Braddock. In 1961, Bell died. The same year, his autobiographical book, In the Midst of Life, was published.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.